Welcome to Office Hours, where we've been answering your media and tech-related production questions every single day since March 25th, 2020. Alexander Knight, off in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Alexander, what have we got?
First question coming in this morning is from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. My xMac mini server with a Blackmagic 8K Pro G2 is not registering on the desktop video 14.5 app, despite lowering security and utilities. Any suggestions on a fix? Ronnie Hofso is going to try to help you out here. Ronnie?
Yeah, I've had similar trouble. I'm not using that exact cabinet, but I'm using a Sonnet external enclosure. The thing that is driver support is different from the old Sonoma up to now Sequoia, and I'm not sure. You don't mention what you are running on. Only the driver version from Blackmagic. What I would suggest is that you uninstall that one and roll back to 12.9, I think. And see if that makes life easier. I had success changing between those two depending on what of the operating systems we are using. And the reasoning behind that is that Apple has changed the way of how the drivers are actually approved. And if you are on Sequoia and I'm sorry, I should actually be showing this to you guys, but it's a little bit difficult because I have a Norwegian version here, but I can still do it. So what you need to do is to go into General, and in General you have here in Norwegian it's login objects. Maybe you guys can help me define it. And in the bottom here you have something called driver extensions, and there is an exclamation mark. If you click on that exclamation mark, make sure that Blackmagic desktop video drivers extensions are enabled. And even if this is not correct, there is also there's also some other ways to do it. But please make sure that you uninstall the drivers and then reinstall it entirely before trying this. And this is on Sequoia.
Alex?
Yeah, Nikki points out that the DeckLink 8K Pro G2 is a PCI Gen 3 card, and the xMac mini server is a PCI Gen 2. So it may still work integrated capacity, but the card and the box don't necessarily line up. And also, did you plug in the PCI power into the card? So those are things to think about as well.
Next question.
This one's coming from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina, USA. I got to see Nate Bargatze's tour show this past weekend. It featured a round stage on the floor with a 13K seat arena. As the comedians wandered around the stage, there were often jarring jump cuts on the video board. How would you have shot this?
Chris Fenwick's going to start us off. Chris?
Hey, Bo. So I think the thing about theater in the round, it's actually very similar to anything, whether it's in a round or not. The jump cuts you're seeing are probably because let's take a compass rose, for example. He's talking to the north, forward, whatever, and if he turns to the back and you cut to another close-up, that's the issue. It's you're going close-up to close-up to close-up. I think the best thing to do is to notice when he's making a big course correction or turning to a different direction. You should cover that on a wider shot. And I'll tell you, because I've done a lot of comedy, a good comedy director is gonna get those close-ups on the punchline or the silly face or the reaction or the eyebrow twitch. I mean, that's funny. And so a lot of times it's going to be like, wide shot, close up, audience reaction, wide shot. That's your basic comedy formula. But if you add into it the added element of turning around, you can't do those jump cuts. You've got to see when he's about to turn and cover it wider. So I think that's the main thing.
Interesting philosophical thing. How can you cross the line when there is no line, when you've got theater in the round? Courtney Gooden, your thoughts?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about crossing the line because there's just one person on the stage, so you don't have to stay between them. But I guess that person's rapport with the audience becomes the line that you don't want to cross. Yeah, you could shoot it in the round. The problem is you don't know which direction, when it's in the round with a round stage, you don't know which direction the comedian is going to deliver to, and doesn't want to have, you don't want to set up your cameras and then find out you're on the back of his head for the whole show. So you have to mount cameras kind of in a circle, or do what they did recently on some of the award shows. They have a little robotic camera on a track that can travel all the way around the stage, so they can position that at any point in the compass and move with him as he changes direction. What you see then is him he doesn't really change his direction, but the audience is moving behind him. So it makes kind of like a helicopter orbit shot as he's changing direction. And then you can stay on the cameras that are fixed cameras that are mounted from that direction. So you have to kind of cover all bases. The Emmys did that. I think it was the Emmys or the Golden Globes. I think it was the Golden Globes did it because of the Beverly Hilton. They had a shot from the front, and then they had another shot from the side for the presenters. And some presenters would present toward the back of the a ballroom, and some presenters would be presenting to the side of the ballroom. And it was weird for them because when they're presenting to the side, they're not facing 3/4 of the live audience that's there. And there's a separate camera on a track and a stalk that comes up, a elevated camera, and it can take a picture. It can shoot them as if it's directly in front of them, either from the front or from the side. And it has a prompter mounted on it. So it was a little tough to do, but comedians aren't working off prompters, so you have to deal with that.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I've done a lot in the round. When we first asked to do it, we had a show with Richard Branson, and he really loves to do things in the round, discussions of 4 or 5 or 6 people. And I was like, there's no way you should do this. Like, this is not, there's a reason that everybody's on one side of the room is so that we can put our cameras on the other side of the room. And I was wrong. Like the first time we did it, it wasn't perfect. We didn't have a lot of time to work on it, but I suddenly saw the value of it. It brought the audience so much closer to everyone to the stage. But it's very hard when people are walking and talking. I mean, it's probably one of the most challenging things. One of the things that's interesting also is that I've done some stuff with a couple other comedians, not Nate Bargatze, but others. And if you're not part of the record, for Netflix or HBO or whatever, a lot of times that's a local TD without, they don't tour with at least the ones that we saw, the ones that do iMag aren't touring with the comedian, and that meant that they are, they're just kind of guessing, so it's not like someone who gets to see him and understands what his cues are and has seen the show 30 times or 20 times or 10 times. This might be the first time they ever see it. They might see a little bit of rehearsal and mic checks, but they won't see the whole show. So and if he's done it 2 or 3 nights in a row, I bet you it gets better, over time, because they know where he's going to go. I definitely agree with Chris that, what you would do is try to find medium to wide shots to keep on going back and forth to. So the close-ups now, and again, what you see on an HBO, as Bo I'm sure knows very well, is something that now we have plenty of time to think about where we're going to put those shots and where we're going to put those cuts. When it's happening live to iMag, it's a very challenging thing to figure out where to go. I was thinking about when Courtney was talking about the camera that went around, which probably wouldn't be practical with 13,000 people, but you could have 5 or 6 cameras that had like 6 cameras with 60 degrees of stuff that if he had something in him that it would always know where he was turned and always did a close-up from those angles. Not that it would do it automatically, but you'd always have a camera that was honed on him with a close-up in the round. Could be an interesting, like, I've got cameras that can do that. Would be kind of an interesting puzzle.
Chris, you want to come back in?
Yeah, a couple things. One, if somebody could please find the soundbite where Alex said, "I definitely agree with Chris," and send that to me, that would be great. Also,
the problem is someone's gonna edit it, and then they're gonna add it into a whole bunch of things. I agree with Chris. With Chris.
Are we going down that path? And the other thing is, I totally agree, Alex. An iMag crew, the local, Jumbotron. No shade on them. They're doing good, but they haven't done the show dozens of times. They haven't seen it, and
it's different than to say one thing. It's different than concerts, because when we go, like a Metallica concert or whatever, the person TD. In fact, we've had Marcia, who's done a lot of Metallica shows on, they do tour with the band because it's really important to understand what those things are. But for comedians, that's usually not an expense they throw in.
Totally
one of my favorite venues when I was growing up was the Celebrity Theater in Phoenix, and it was not only in the round, but the stage rotated. And I was always thinking about that's interesting from a perspective director point of view, because not only do you have to worry about angles, but they're constantly changing. And what was I watching the other week? Peter Gabriel's Secret Garden Tour was done in the round, and one of the best switched shows for that kind of thing, because the musicians and everybody else were very mobile on stage, and there was just a constant shift of focus. But they managed to pull off videos that looked great. I might go to school on
Is that the one with Paula Cole?
Yes.
That's an amazing concert.
Stunning concert. Stunning performances all around. And just look at how they cut it. If nothing else, I just sat back and went, how are they doing this? Because they got so many angles, and it was seamless. You can't take your eyes off the performance the whole time.
It's a beautiful show. Nigel?
Yeah, the Metallica thing reminded me of something. I was watching a video recently, and they were talking about pyros at concerts and how the artists protect themselves. And the Metallica one, it was, we're about to load the pyros, and he gets it in his ear, we're about to load the pyros, go to any mic. Because if you stand next to a mic, you don't get burnt.
There you go. They set up all the pyro with, we know where people will be because we'll tell them to be there. That's pretty brilliant.
I thought it was interesting when in the VR version of the Metallica concert, you can look down and he's like, oh, he's got a teleprompter. He's got all the words. I mean, I was like, you've been doing these shows for a long time, but there's like a little box down there, and every once in a while in the VR version, you can kind of look down. I kept, when you watch it second or third time, you're like looking down and you see there's somebody out there. There's a teleprompt operator somewhere.
They usually disguise them. They usually disguise them to look like a stage wedge.
Yeah, it does. It looks kind of like a stage wedge behind a bunch of other things. You would never notice it unless there was a VR camera that let you look down at it.
Bo, thank you for the question. It's been fun to talk about this one, but time's up. Next question.
This one is from Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. Ruling out consumer channel cell data from AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, what are the options for producers who need to stream with a reliable commercial-grade cell connection?
Courtney Gooden's going to help us out here. Courtney?
Well, it depends on whether you need a cell connection or if you just need a data connection. If you're if you're roaming around, I think you're going to be stuck with live view or something like that aggregates multiple cell channels into a single data stream. If you're in a specific point and you have a nearby point within a couple of miles that has line of sight, or sometimes even 900 megahertz can do, with a few obstructions. There is point-to-point microwave, which you can get. Radio Labs sells these versions with these little small dishes, and they can do point-to-point. If you need to jump your go away. If you need to jump your Wi-Fi signal from some wired connection to the internet to a remote location, you can use these two dishes and set them up and aim them at each other and get your signal over a couple of miles. But if you're roving around, that's not going to work for you.
Alex.
Yeah, there's a couple of different options. I would agree. If you're doing point to point, I have used Ubiquity's version of that. So it's a full duplex 1 gig connection, and I think the longest we threw it about 10 miles. So it will go a long way if you're just going to a single point. Now, what we did there is, of course, we did that point to point to get it to where we were, and then we were able to build a wireless connection from there. So for the local couple hundred feet that we needed, as well as wired connections for where we had it. So that can work to some degree. It doesn't mean you can spread out a little bit. The other thing to look at is Verizon and others, but Verizon is the one that's doing the most press. They have a production level of 5G. So if you look at this is the press release here in Verizon Business that debuts. So you want to look at Verizon Business, and it debuts broadcast private 5G. We saw them, they previewed this at NAB. If you were on Verizon and you connected to it, it wouldn't let you do it for very long. It was obviously like a taste test, but it would let we were getting 2 gigs a second up and down on anybody who had a Verizon phone at NAB this year. So it wouldn't sustain. If you did it over and over again, we realized, they'll let you do it, and then they'll take it away. But they were trying to kind of give you a sense of that's what you could get. And so if you are in a place where that works, and if you have the money, and we're still trying to research it. If you're wondering what I'm doing with those little phones and the return video and everything else, I'm figuring out the mechanics of that as we go down the path of talking to Verizon about using that, because that could theoretically make one of those cameras really high performance, like have a little iPad or an iPhone with a return. All that stuff gets really interesting. And that's not just for broadcast out, but that could theoretically be for a Zoom connection and so on and so forth. So it's definitely something that we're researching heavily, and we'll let you know as we get closer to the ground.
Hey, don't forget, we're always taking your questions. That's how we run this show, and you can ask questions, chat about them, and vote on them in Mukana. That's our live Q&A system. Go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email, and then once you're kind of into the system just a little bit, you can ask questions. You can vote on the questions, which is very important. So that's officehours.global/join. Next question.
This is a QR code question coming from Patrick Heineman in Longview, Texas. Using an Xbox controller to control a PTZ optics camera on a 12-foot jib and need to mount the controller, thinking Velcro. Any other ideas?
Jason Bass is going to start us off here. Jason?
I would look for whatever it is they use to mount in like toy stores, the kiosk mount for the Xbox controller. But, barring that, make sure it's powered, make sure it doesn't lose power. And, if you've got a way to hardwire it, perfect.
Yeah, if you can keep kids from taking them or messing up, that's a pretty good system. Courtney Gooden.
Those are called steel bolts, and they're bolted to the cabinet themselves. You have to get a hacksaw to take those off. What I've used a lot on all of my portable equipment to hold, like, distribution amps and things to the side of the case. Once I get there, I don't want to have them on the outside of the case when I ship the case, but once I get there, I pull the DAs out and I stick them on the side of the case with something from 3M called Dual Lock, which is a hard Velcro. Looks something like this on its in its packaging. They don't call it necessarily Dual Lock anymore, but that's the name of it. And this is there is no male and female. There's no hook and no loop side. It's all made of these little polyester posts which interlock, and they have little tops on them. They look like little mushrooms, and they lock together. And the adhesive on this is a 3M adhesive that I think it's silicone of some sort of rubber type adhesive that is rated for outdoors. It's really strong and the nice thing about Dual Lock is once you clamp it together, it doesn't rotate or wobble or do anything. It's like it is mounted to a surface. So it's great for things where you have to push controls on, because it's not going to give and mess up your fine actuation of any, joysticks or anything that you're using. If you mount it on standard hook and loop Velcro, it's going to wobble a little bit. You don't want that in something where you need to do fine control, for example, a camera move.
Ronnie Hofsoy wants to get into this, Harley.
Yeah, just to top that, we use only these which is already mentioned by our friend Courtney, and the way we do that normally. So when we are building racks, we have a strip of this on probably each side of the rack, so that we can have all our converters that are fitted with the Dual Lock small strip, just an inch or two, and we can put everything on the sides. And we also have a strip of this on the back of our displays, even if it's a 43-inch or a 24-inch. We have a strip of this so that we can attach any of these loose items, or throw-down converters or whatever it would be, and attach that in a secure manner. And as Courtney said, it's really rigid because it doesn't wiggle. And it has thousands of uses, and if needed be, you just change it.
Alex.
I would definitely print a holder. So I would absolutely, do it. I actually built an Xbox controller a long time ago from a laser scan. so I, but this was a cyberware laser scan probably almost 30 years ago. And so so what I would do, I did a PlayStation actually, but anyway, But what you want to do is get that, and you can do something like Polycam or something, or photogrammetry, to kind of take some pictures of it, build a 3D model of it, and then of course there'll be a lot of typically what we do with printers is I would print a little sections of it, little strips, to make sure that my measurements are accurate, and get it just to where I want it so that it fits there, and then start building out around it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you'll find that if you have something that you can snap it into, that then has an external mount that you can just then screw into things, life's going to be a lot easier. So it'll be a little bit of work up front. Of course, you can do something where you just use a 3M dual lock, or use Velcro, or all of those things will work. But I think that if you are going to use this often, if you own the camera and you're going to be using a jib or anything else, this kind of mount, I wouldn't try to make it for the jib. I would just make it so that you had, it was easy to put a 1/4-20 or a 3/8. So I'd have some holes in there that you could kind of attach to it. So that's probably how I would look at it. And I would look at something that is more rubbery as far as what you print with, so that it's got some give to it, so that it's easier to tie in, as opposed to some of the more brittle versions.
Hey, don't forget, today's Monday, in the U.S. at least, but something else on the other side of the world. But that means tonight is extra hours. So if you'd like an additional dose of office hours type content, tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific, extra hours takes place. Next question.
Another QR code question coming in from Jay Horsley in Mulvane. I'm not sure what KS is. Is that Kentucky or...
Kansas.
Okay. Has anyone looked into the new Rodecaster Pro / Rodecaster Duo Call Me beta feature that directly connects Rodecasters over the internet at, according to the marketing copy, low latency and high fidelity?
Alexander, we're going to turn right back around to you. What do you think of it?
I haven't tried it. I don't own a Rodecaster, but Rode is adding new features all the time. You need to be part of the Rodecaster beta testing program, which is free, doesn't cost you anything. So first you need to sign up for that. It's kind of interesting. It looks like what they've done is they are using some kind of WebRTC feature that they've built on their own servers here. And they've built a little interface now. So you basically have a call management system on the Rodecaster, which is cool. So if you're a podcast, you want to do something like a radio call-in show, you have this interface now. And basically you've got these call management features here where you have multiple lines coming in, but it's all done over IP. And you can give somebody a web link, basically, that takes them to a web page. They got a screenshot of the interface too. I'll just make this bigger so you can see it, basically. So this allows the user to easily join the call, and it supports echo cancellation, automatic mic gain adjust, and you can select the speaker output, and it'll work on a mobile device. So I haven't tested it, but it looks like a really cool feature and useful for podcasters that want to do that type of thing.
Courtney, you had thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't tried it. I do have a Rodecaster Pro 2, but I don't have another one, or a Duo. I'm not sure whether they have to be on the same local area network or Wi-Fi network, or if it works over the internet with some type of reflector, something that it calls into and gets its IP address, wide area network IP, and then tunnels through any firewalls that you may have on either side. So I'm not sure how that works. I see some mention of Bluetooth for pairing them, and something about the fact that it works in a browser, so it may be browser-based, so it may be broadcasting, showing up as a little internet server, inside the unit itself, and then you just connect to it. If you find the IP address, the public IP address of it, you may be able to do that as long as it's punched through your firewall. Haven't tried it. Don't know how all the handshaking works if you're outside the local area network.
Alex Lindsay.
I haven't used it, but my understanding is you give someone a QR code and it just simply tunnels through. So it's designed for a point-to-point connection. It's not something that will. It's only one person to one person. There's not multi-connection, but it will burrow through theoretically. Of course, we don't know until we test it how it transverses complex networks to do that kind of thing the way Zoom does. But it is designed to work with two people somewhere in the world, assuming that each of their networks is probably relatively simple.
Next question.
Another QR code question coming in from Max in Malaysia. Redundancy is important, but should I bill my client for a smaller live event for it? It's getting expensive for a small setup like mine to bring another vmix station or another constellation to ME for redundancy.
Nigel Dessau, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was taught a sales technique that's called high and early versus low and late, which is it's always better to sell higher up the organization something earlier than lower down the organization something later. So in this case, earlier you bring up the question of redundancy backups and securing and say, look, we could, how important is it that there's a backup? How important, you can ask a bunch of open questions. Will help you decide or help you size that. It's going to be easy to sell rather than you get nearer the end of the sale where you go, oh, and by the way, if you want a backup, it's XYZ. And if you feel the need and if you guaranteed that through output, even though they're not paying for it, then you're going to have to eat that. So these are the sort of things that's always easier to sell high and early.
Alex Lindsay.
Now, I will say that for the most part, when given the opportunity, I will try to avoid doing, I will avoid line item bids. So when given the opportunity, I will always, and a lot of times what I say is that the kit costs this. If I have to do a line item, I'll line item the people and I'll line item travel and I'll line item stuff. And then I just say production kit and I say it's $5,000 or $6,000 or whatever that number is that we've decided we're going to rent. Inside of that, there's a bunch of redundancy. And I build that in. What I don't do is necessarily expose the extra pieces that I'm putting in there inside of that rental. They're getting a discount on it. They're not paying full rate for two constellations or whatever I have there, but I'm protecting myself. Everybody thinks that it's okay to do things with every client who doesn't do live thinks that it's fine to do things without a backup until something goes wrong. They'll go, oh, well, it'll be fine. We'll be okay. And people understand if something goes wrong, and everyone thinks that, and that is not how it turns out. Like how it turns out is that you don't have that client anymore, and so the thing is that, and so regardless of whether you told them, that they chose not to have a backup or whatever, you're still going to be on the hot plate if something doesn't work, and so and that's where it's just how the nature of this thing. So basically, there are things that we do have to tell them about because it's a huge expense. So if it's a large external event, or large external cost to you, so you're paying money for it. So for instance, if I want a satellite truck to back up my internet connection, I'm going to tell the client that we need a satellite truck as a backup. That's we need to have a second output. And most clients, it takes some education. When it comes to my hardware, usually we have backups just kind of quietly built into the system so that if one fails, we can roll over to the other one. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily back up everything. Sometimes that's not practical, but we do back up key things and know how we're going to get from one to the other if we get pushed into that corner. But when you get to a point, especially as you start moving up the food chain for a lot of these things, the reason that, over many years, Pixelcore was able to do so many jobs for so many very large companies was because somewhere somebody failed. And then they're looking for something new, and you're the ones that already have a contract with the company, so you get to get pushed into the place, and then you're just making sure that you don't lose the ground. And how you lose the ground is having one not go well.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, it kind of depends on whether it's backup equipment for you, like Alex said, or if it's a live show and you want to have that backup equipment, not just in the car in a case under the table, ready to pull out and put up if the main one fails. I always travel with backup equipment like that, which I do not charge the client for. So when I get there and start setting up, if I discover that a piece of the equipment was damaged in transit and it's not going to work, I can pull out the backup during the setup and keep going. I don't have to say, oh, well, we got to send back to so-and-so and they've got to FedEx something overnight and the show's in 3 hours, Something that I can replace on short notice from within my own equipment that I'm traveling with, I don't charge extra backup for. But if it's a live show and the producer is nervous about, if any one piece of crucial equipment goes down, they want to have a second version of that equipment, a second pipeline, for example, teleprompting. A lot of times on big live shows, You will have two teleprompting systems sitting side by side, two operators running each of those teleprompting systems, keeping them in sync with each other. One can go offline and handle changes to the upcoming script, and they shoot the script over to the one that's scrolling live so that last-minute changes can be adopted. That we charge for because you're paying for two separate teleprompting systems even though there's only one teleprompter in the room, or they may actually, a lot of times they will have two displays side by side, and if one goes dead, the other one comes on. So in those cases, we do charge, and the producer knows that it's there so that they will have zero downtime or just a few seconds of downtime if something fails during the show.
Next question.
This one's coming from Jack Cannon, Phoenix, Arizona, USA. What online tool do you prefer for receiving payment via credit card, looking for lowest transaction rates while still being a reputable provider?
Alexander Knight, do you have a solution?
Well, there are many credit card payment processors out there with varying degrees of user interface and ease of use and all that sort of stuff. I've used many of them over the years. I find a lot of them pretty junky, and I've settled on Stripe. You've probably heard of it. If you haven't, a lot of businesses, I find even a lot of small businesses start out with Stripe just because they have such a great API, great documentation, and a lot of third-party services integrate with Stripe. I am actually using it. I'm not paying anything other than the transaction fees. For my needs, it's incredibly simple. I just create an invoice and send it to the customer, and it takes them to a Stripe webpage where they can pay online. So that's what I'm using. And if you look at their website here, it's pretty common. You see these types of rates, but they charge 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. I believe that's for domestic cards. For international, they charge an additional fee. So if you haven't tried Stripe, you can test it out for free. And I would highly recommend it.
Alex Lindsay.
Right. That's as far as credit cards. Now, as your bills get larger, you oftentimes are going to want to move to bank transfer. So up to about $2,000 to $3,000, we may take a credit card. After we get past that number, that 2.7% starts to add up. And so it starts to add up to real money. And so we start thinking about, hey, how about we do a bank transfer is going to cost you $20. So it depends on who your client is. But getting to bank transfers usually makes sense. You can also, depends on where you're, if you're doing it to someone there's lots of online solutions, whether it's Apple Pay or other things. I've had people say, literally, can I pay you, like for a very small job, can I just pay you with Apple Pay? And we figured it out. It's a little weird. But if you're looking for something normal on your website that someone can charge for, I think Stripe is probably one of your better solutions. But again, think about bank transfer after you go over $2,000 or $3,000.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, we try and discourage credit cards, but we use Square because it's easy because we can just have a little reader that plugs into your phone and just run their card through. And you have the new ones that have the tap to pay on them. So Square and Stripe are very, very similar to each other. But a lot of clients, are doing a multi-day thing, and like Alex says, it's going to be a multi-$1,000 bill, and a lot of people don't want to put that on their Amex card, and Amex, is one of the few that will allow a single charge worth that size. And they're going to charge you 3%, somewhere between 2.5%, 3%. And usually, if we do take a credit card on a larger dollar amount, we tack the 3% onto the invoice so that we make the client pay for the convenience of using the credit card, although it's really a convenience to us, but because we get paid sooner. That, and we use ACH bank transfers these days. Nobody wants to write out a check and mail it to you in the mail. They will just ask for your banking information and your electronic routing number and your checking account number, and they will transfer the funds directly, even if it doesn't come in for another 2 weeks. But it saves them having to deal with it. It's easier for a lot of payroll companies and pay companies to just do that ACH directly into your account. And it's much safer because the checks don't have to travel through the mail.
Happiest day in my corporate life was when I plumbed into my largest client through an ACH direct check, because it just made everything so much easier. Before that, I'd had literally $30,000 to $50,000 checks in my briefcase that I was schlepping around the streets, and that was just stupid. But older times. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana is asking, what wipes or spray do you use to clean contacts? Do you ever treat or protect connections for oxidation before you put them into use?
And I'm sure this means metal contacts and circuits, not contact lenses. Because when I first read this, I went, what? So, Alexander Knight?
I don't wipe down or spray things unless they look really, really dirty. But I like MG Chemicals contact cleaner for certain things. But I don't tend to use this stuff on cables because I'm careful with stuff. And usually they get put into storage and they're not going to get dirty. So maybe some other people have some better suggestions. But in my experience, they don't go bad. I try to avoid using nickel-plated cabling, especially for when it comes to audio stuff, because it does oxidize over the years and they tend to tarnish and go black. So as much as some people hate gold-plated stuff, the gold-plated stuff doesn't seem to tarnish, so I prefer it.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I've been using Deoxit D-Series for many years here, this kind of stuff. That's what the cans look like. They make it in a spray and a squirt bottle, and, you can buy it by the quart if you use a lot of it, but it gets kind of pricey. This has been around forever, since 1956, you see there. And it puts a coating on contacts. It rejuvenates contacts. Not only does it remove oxidation, but then it coats it with a light conductive oil that will prevent it from corroding again, prevent the oxygen from getting to those contacts. And so it lengthens the life of those contacts somewhat and prevents them, and makes good electrical contact for quite a while before you have to respray them again.
Next question.
Lois Richter in Davis, California is asking, our setup for a mostly silent merge meeting includes a Yeti Nano mic on top of the cart, 3 feet up, and a speaker on the floor directly below it. We have been using the cardioid pattern. Can you see any problem if we switch to full circle?
And Alexander Knight's going to help you out.
So when you say full circle, what you mean, Lois, is the omnidirectional, which is, it is, the picture is represented by a circle, which means it's going to pick up everything in a 360-degree pattern around the capsule. I don't recommend that for many reasons. There are times when you need to capture ambience. This probably would not be one of them if it's for spoken word. And mainly because you're going to pick up a lot more of the ambient sound of the room, which is probably not what you're going to want, especially if that room is not a perfectly treated acoustic studio. So cardioid directional pickup pattern is what you want. Get the mic as close to the talent as possible. 3 feet away is pretty far, and that's not a fantastic mic. So I don't know what kind of results you got, but I would try to get a mic closer to that person, if not a handheld microphone or maybe even a head-worn microphone, to try to maximize your signal-to-noise ratio if you can.
Ronnie Hofstroy.
Yeah, when I was reading this question, I was thinking, is this actually something that is being done without having the software or the solution actively being echo cancellation? And of course, if this is for Zoom or other types of digital meeting systems, of course you have to enable echo cancellation, or else there will be all kinds of problems in this setup. So in those situations where you actually need to have a speaker, you at least have it really, really low so that you almost can't hear it. And if you're going to pair that with a microphone like the Yeti, I'm thinking that is problematic. It's even problematic using it in cardioid pattern and then shifting it to being omni. I would think that you will have trouble using this at all. So I agree with Alexander. You probably should be thinking of finding another solution on using another type of microphone. And if that is not an option, I would think of using in-ears or some other solutions for listening to this, or even place the speaker far, far away. But I wouldn't recommend doing this type of setup at all.
Alex?
I guess I would say it depends. And I would probably just give it a shot and test it. The reason I say that is that without a lot of audio production on the other end, if you're just doing a USB And it's just, if it's a USB mic, it's not going to have a lot of latency. If you're just using a webcam, it's not going to have a lot of latency. You may find that the echo cancellation inside of Zoom works pretty well. The problem we really get into is that when you have when you delay the audio, it defeats the echo cancellation. So if you do any delay to the audio, it can defeat and then you just get echo back to the person, and that obviously is problematic. But I will say that if you don't have a big production system and you're tied straight into it, we have done this where it is an open speaker. And here's the problem with it is that when you will not get duplex. As soon as someone's got an open speaker, you don't get full duplex, which means that you can't both hear everything everybody's saying. So when you start talking, it's going to knock their mic down. When they start talking, it's going to knock your mic down. So it creates this kind of uncomfortable echo cancellation for everybody. Really kind of makes it not a great experience, not as good experience as when you have full duplex. But I don't think you have full duplex now. So if you're doing this the way it is, you may find that this actually works better than you think, or better than we would think, as long as you're not delaying the audio on going in. So again, it's not what we would recommend, but I do think that you may find that it works okay the way you're, even with a full circle pattern, a omnidirectional.
And just because somebody may be new to the industry, full duplex just means like a telephone when you can hear and speak both exactly at the same time all the time, as opposed to that old radio thing where you push a button, talk to somebody, and then you have to release that and let them talk back to you because one side is muted while the other side is active. Don't forget, if you have questions you want to put into the show queue, the quickest way to get them is just to type askofficehours.global into your web browser. That's askofficehours.global. If you're watching the show, you can also use the QR code. Let me fire it up here in the corner of the screen if you want to take a shot of that. That gets you into our back-end system. They'll take a quick look at it, and something will get into the list pretty quickly this way. So if you're not yet in the Mukana backend system, you could just use this, askofficehours.global. Next question.
Andre Jolet in Berlin is asking, anyone notice that the main stage of the Tomorrowland Festival in Belgium burned down 2 days prior to opening? They managed to replace this stage within 36 hours using Metallica's PA system and a huge LED. And there's a link to a YouTube video there.
Ronnie Hopsoy is going to start us off. Ronnie?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in EDM, and I've been following Tomorrowland across the globe for many years, and this was a tragedy. It was supposedly started by, the fire was supposedly started by testing some of the new type of pyros they were using in this 2 weekends. So there are 2 weekends full, almost 24 hours a day. And the entire set that has taken years to build was burnt down to the ground. And as I understood, the fire department was just protecting all the other buildings around the venue and trying to stop it from taking the woods nearby into its catastrophe. And the thing that the vendors and all these people that are organizing these types of events, and especially Tomorrowland, they managed to just get a hold of a big PA rig from, I think it was Austria, and it was they flew it in and got it up and running, both the stage, the LED screens, and the entire PA systems. And even some lighting, in addition to everything else they had to do, in like 36 hours. That is next to unbelievable, and it shows the power that these type of crews actually have when they just put their mind to it, and it became a really big thing. And I had to say, I was absolutely sure they had to cancel the entire week and probably get something up for the next weekend. But hooray! All flags to the top, and they actually made it through, and they were ready to open on time.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I saw some of the news coverage of this, and here's what it still looks like as it's burning. The strange, I'm not sure if this set was made of polyurethane foam. It looks like this, I don't know what all this white stuff is over this construction. But this is only like 1/6 of the stage that you're seeing in this video here that's on fire. If you look to the left, it's all that's left of the area back over here is just this scaffolding structure. So I would imagine that after the fire is put out, that just clearing all the toxic chemicals that were left, you have to be wary of that steel scaffolding. If that's going to be in danger of falling, you'll have to dismantle that and get it out of the way. If they're going to have it in the same place, maybe they set it up in an adjacent area so to avoid having to demolish the remnants of what's left over after the conflagration. But a lot of touring companies, and I've worked as a stagehand on Blue Oyster Cult concerts where you'd come in with 70, 40, with 10 40-footer trucks and unload it and set it up in one day, do a one-night concert and tear it down after the concert and be gone by morning. So, portable concert, traveling concerts are used to setting up stuff, but this is at a whole nother level. Just the set and the stage the decorations alone of the stage, would probably take a month to set up, it seems.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, these stages are designed. I mean, the stage that's there now is designed to be set up in a day. So this is a touring stage. If it was all in one place, which is probably while the thing was burning, most likely there was the whole producer crew was out there calling around trying to find somebody who's got a tour. Probably I guess I heard the Metallica. This is Metallica's stage. They said, hey, when Metallica has a European tour most likely coming up. They're probably not on it yet. The stage is going to be there. It's big money for Metallica because I'm sure they said, well, that'll cost you X amount of dollars, which will be a big number because they'll have to recheck the entire thing. So it was going to be a big number. But it is designed. That's why they're calling around. And, if they're doing this music stuff, it's like who knows who. And they start calling tour managers and they start figuring out who's got a rig that's within 12 hours of driving. They throw it in. And a lot of times, if the European tour was up to speed, they'd most likely have it all in trucks. So that's most likely the thing is if what they were probably looking for was a tour that's going to start in the next month that's already has it's already preloaded. It's sitting somewhere in Austria or Berlin or wherever. And we can get them on a road. Europe, from a United States perspective, is not that big, so it's a quicker thing. And again, it's designed to be set up in 24 hours at most. So I'm sure that's what they looked at. I will say that it is it's still, this is why you pay great people to do great work. I mean, this is I don't want to undermine the incredible lift that the production did to figure out how to clear the other one out. And this is also where, especially when you have this number of people, you have millions of dollars. You have millions of dollars at your whim to get this done. Like this is a spared no expense. Doesn't matter what it costs. Get it done because there's your brand. There's all the ticket sales. There's millions and millions of dollars sitting there to turn this over. And so they were given, I'm sure, a blank check to make this go away. And they did what they needed to do to get it up. I will say that while it was a tragedy, it would have been a much bigger tragedy if they hadn't done the full testing of the pyro, and that happened when there was 100,000 people or 50,000 people there. This would have been the end of Tomorrowland. Like it would have been the end of this is and it would have been hundreds of people that were probably casualties if this had gone up. So I bet you there'll be a lot of new rules about what things are made of, that are on these stages, based on for everyone. Like this is one of those things that everybody in the market will watch, and there'll be a whole bunch of new rules set up for everyone about what happens in the testing. But it was very fortunate that they fully tested their pyro, and didn't do it when there's a lot of people there.
Next question.
This one's coming in from Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. My external drives refuse to eject without force quitting after updating my MacMini M1 to Sequoia. Is this a known issue?
Jason Bache, you have some help for him?
This is not a known issue, and I think this may be a deeper, more endemic problem specifically to yours, but I'm going to recommend something that may or may not work. OWC has this app called the dock ejector, and it works whether or not you're using an OWC dock. It basically just ejects everything with one button. It'll eject all the drives. That said, I think you've got something deeper going on here, and I would be a little bit wary of just ignoring it.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the message is that you're getting there. We have seen this before, and usually it's a subsystem that's using that drive. So it's using it as an external drive for something. So it's holding, it's decided that drive it's going to store something from the system onto it, and then it doesn't want to let go of it. So it'd be really interesting to see what the message is that you're getting. Most likely this is already using your drive, or this is still using your drive and doesn't want to eject it.
Next question.
Talal Lopez Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina is asking, did Alex finish explaining what he saw in the Vision Pro concert? Were they sending stage cues or just lyrics?
Alex?
All we saw was lyrics, so no stage cues. I mean, and you don't see it very often. It's out of the corner. Obviously, they were not trying to shoot to that screen, and I think that they, if anything, were avoiding it. But there were some really great shots in that. There's a lot of hit and miss in the Metallica concert on the Vision Pro. Some of it was okay, but other shots were just stupendous that they did with that, and that's what you get especially when you're shooting a live show. But in some cases, to get that shot, they had to show a little bit of the teleprompter. So it was only probably 3 or 4 little glimpses of it, and what it looked like was the lyrics. And I can definitely see you're in front of 65,000 people. There's a lot going on. Even if you've done this literally 1,000 times or a couple thousand times, it's probably more of a safety thing than anything else. And it's what a lot of times happens is you put it in there not because you need it right now, but because you want to make sure that the artist knows that anytime they need it, it's there. Like it's just not like if there's and I've seen people like they get into the middle of a show and for whatever reason something distracts them and they lose where they're at. I was talking to Ed, I was talking to the lead singer for Bare Naked Ladies, and I asked him about how, like I was asking him, like, those raps, like, how do you come up with those? And he goes, oh, that's the way my brain works all the time. He goes, the biggest problem I have is I'll be up there on the slower songs, and I can't remember what verse I'm in because it's going too slow. And so like he'll do something, his mind will go somewhere else between the chorus and the next verse, and then he can't remember where he was. He said, that's my biggest challenge when he's doing it. So that's why those kinds of things are on the ground.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, having run teleprompter for a number of acts like this, it's used to run teleprompter for Cher and her comeback tour. It's really a crutch. I mean, they know the lyrics, but it's a guide that the lyrics are there as just kind of a safety blanket, to make the performer know that if they get lost, they can look down and see where they are in the song. And like Alex says, some of these songs have repetitive choruses. Is this the second chorus? Is this the third chorus? Do we do a reprise? And they can just look at the teleprompter and go, okay, that's where we are, and see the words that should come up next. The problem is if they decide to cut a song down during the show, and a lot of times bands are that tight, that the lead singer or the lead guitarist will give a signal to the drummer that we're gonna kill it right now, or maybe we're gonna do repeat the last 4 verses because the crowd's really into it, extend it out. They'll have a little signal and go on that way. Then the teleprompter operator gets lost and goes, what are they doing? I can't find what they're singing. They should be singing this verse and they're not on that verse. They skipped 3 verses, Then it kind of is problematic, but usually it's there just as a comfort and a courtesy to the performer. Frank Sinatra, on the other hand, really depended on it in the later years. He could not do a show without teleprompters.
Next question.
From the QR code, Lou Perez in Santan Valley, Arizona. What were the planar headphones Alex was showing 6 months ago, and what is his opinion of them now?
Alex?
These are the ones that I had. These are the Synaptic headsets, and they died. so I don't have a strong opinion about them. So I thought that it was something that I was doing, but I guess it was something that they one of the ears. I had it for a long time, but I mean, it wasn't more. I think it was more than 6 months ago. It might have been a couple of years ago. But they are not. They're not operational now. So they were. The level of detail in them, they weren't very expensive for a planar headset. The level of detail was amazing. Like I just felt like I was hearing things that I'd never heard in audio. So they were really good. And maybe I should have gone back to them or whatever, but I didn't. So the level of detail was amazing. I'd never heard audio like this before. But they Now, I never hear any audio at all from these. So there you
go. Jason, you want to comment?
Yeah, I have them too. Mine haven't died. The high end is incredibly precise, and anyone who's used planar tweeters knows exactly why and how. But yeah, they're great, but you get what you pay for. They were what, $200, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas is asking, what are the most productive uses for a Synology NAS DS1522 Plus with its mind-blowing array of applications?
Jason Beige is going to help us out. Jason?
Okay, so you're not asking for the most novel, you're asking for the most useful. And in this case, the most useful for me is that I can take an entire Dropbox, sync it down, and then an entire Google Drive, sync it down. And if I want to move from Google Drive to Dropbox, I simply cut and paste, and then the NAS does the rest. Magic.
Next question.
This one is coming in from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. I know some people get conflicted when certain old bands change lineups like Skynyrd, Alice in Chains, and Linkin Park. What do the panelists think of Fleetwood Mac without McVee?
Ronnie Hofsway, thoughts?
Well, I think they have to continue, and as these old bands are getting older, as are we, the chances for they having to replace one or more of the musicians and singers, etc., is higher than for younger bands. But I would like to take this short trip to the band Journey, where Steve Perry had to leave the band for different reasons, and they were looking for. And I was pretty sure that nothing was going to happen with Journey after that point in time, and then. They found this guy, Arnold Pineda, from the Philippines, which was kind of doing some YouTube stuff, and he really has a good voice. And they started listening to this guy from the Philippines, and then suddenly they found out that he can replace, and we can be back on the road again. And that story is nothing that could be happening like 20 years ago before YouTube and the culture of sharing stuff on all those social media channels. So that is an amazing story.
Alexander Knight.
You know, everyone has an opinion about this kind of thing. So some people like it, some people don't. And I'm not here to convince anyone. For me, I always give the band, if they've lost a singer, for example, and a singer's so much part of that sound, if they've lost that person, I always give them a chance. And sometimes I like it, and sometimes I don't like it. So, for example, when back in the 90s when Rob Halford left Judas Priest, they had Tim Ripper Owens come in, and they recorded 2 albums with him. And it was a very different sound. It still kind of sounded like Judas Priest, but it was a lot more modern, a lot heavier. And they actually discovered him because he was in a Judas Priest cover band. And I really loved that era of Judas Priest. Iron Maiden, on the other hand, when Bruce Dickinson left, it was never really the same because Blaze Bayley just couldn't sing those operatic vocal lines. It was different. It was like they were a totally different band. And for me, it didn't work. I haven't heard Fleetwood Mac yet without McVee, so I don't really have an opinion there. But, everyone has a different opinion about this type of thing.
Nigel DeSalle.
It depends which McVee they're without. Because if they're out without John McVee, then they're just Fleetwood. I have to say, saw them a few years ago without Stevie Nicks, still very good. When they got rid of Lindsey Buckingham, they had to hire 3 people to replace him. So that might be a poor economic decision.
Jason Beige.
I'm going to be more abstract about when a band member loses, or when a band loses a key member. In 2003, Metallica lost Jason Newsted, and they got Robert Trujillo. He is an unbelievable bassist. I mean, ostensibly twice the bassist that Jason Newsted was, and I really like Jason Newsted. But, it just depends. It depends on the talent that you're replacing, and it depends on the talent that's coming in.
Yeah, I agree with all those things. It depends on how you do it and what your emotional attachment to the band is. I don't think Fleetwood Mac, before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joined, was anywhere near the same band they became in their magic run of all those years when they were playing all together. And I do think Christine McVie was very underrated in terms of her contributions to that. Some of her just little tiny piano fills and things like that were just brilliant. And I think she was, like I said, very underrated. I do think that there are acts, like when the Beach Boys go out, I don't even care who the lineup is anymore. They're so far from what they were in their magic years that I'm just like, yeah, fine. Put another bassist in, put another whatever, get 5 people to replace them. I don't care. But some of them, you just know that there was a certain magic with that lineup. The band for me that's managed to get by it was the Eagles. They've had some changes over the course of years, and they've still managed to put out extraordinary music through the course of all those changes. So for me, it's just band by band. How good are you at replacing people and making it still the same experience? I think we're ready to go on. Thank you so much for listening this year. If you got a question in here and we didn't quite get to it, remember that if you put it in through the QR code, it'll be persistent. It'll come back tomorrow. If you put it in the system through Makana, it's going to go back into your notes, and we'll have it here for you tomorrow again. So thank you very much. And don't forget, this show does not happen without a lot of people, our constituencies that make this possible. So thank you very much to everybody who put questions into the show, the producers here. You really do drive this show with your decisions and your votes on everybody's questions. So thank you. To the panelists, unbelievable amount of expertise assembles here every single day to try to solve problems for people, and we could not do this without the collective brain trust that is a office hours panel. Thank you. And finally, and certainly not to be missed, is all the people in the back end of the show, the quiet crew all over the world who assemble every day to make this possible. I can't tell you how much we appreciate your work. And for the audience, without all these people in the background that you don't often hear about, none of this really takes place the way it does. Some of them will be on the credits as they roll. Our locked reversal today, if you were to go around and get the expertise you were able to access today through the show, you would have had to travel 40,000 miles to go out and talk to all these people. That is 65,000 kilometers, 318 million bananas for scale. We'll be back tomorrow doing exactly the same thing, and don't forget after hours tonight. See y'all tomorrow.
Nicely done.
Well done, panelists. Thank you.
That flew by.
You ever want to watch an amazing bass guitar? Watch Trujillo's Metallica interview or his audition. It's insane.
Oh yeah. The audition.
He's like, let's do that at triple speed.
Yeah.
When my son was getting into music, Fall Out Boy was one of his favorite bands, and that drummer. And I remember every time I saw a live show, I went, "What happened to the guy on drums?" Because he was brilliant. I think he was a studio musician or something. Yeah. But it's very much like those days when the Wrecking Crew did all the background tracks, and the people doing the touring show would have to try to get up to their level, and it was very difficult.
Those days, it's not the Wrecking Crew anymore, but there's still a lot of studio.
Yeah,
there's a lot of bands that come in the next day and go, "Wow, you guys cleaned up a lot in the mix." And they're like, yeah,
really
we did.
Yeah, we